Hi, this is Ian Heller, and you are listening to or watching What If I'm Right with moi, Ian Heller. Today's show is very exciting, but before I start telling you all about how exciting this show is going to be, I need you to hit subscribe, to like the show, to listen, and to subscribe and to like the show, because that's how shows like mine get the traction so that we can compete with those larger behemoths that are on all the major podcasting streaming places that there are. That's how you get a real diversity of news and information. It's important. So, today, my guest is Colin Erdle. Heard of him? No? Just kidding. He's a small farmer in western New York State. Why Colin? Is he a farming expert? An academic or scholar who researches and teaches students about farming? No, but that's not really what this show is about. A couple of weeks ago, when I wanted to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, rather than having a talking head who teaches or researches or makes policy about the geopolitical issues of the region, I had Arella Portugali on the show. She's not an expert on Israel. She's just a fellow sociologist. But she is Israeli and understands things from a grassroots perspective, something we really don't get much of in legacy or even new media. As a sociologist, I love to understand what's going on from a ground-up perspective. That's not to say that I don't study or have an understanding of larger global issues. But on this show, What If I'm Right? I feel like I can be a lot more useful and interesting and distinctive for you if I focus on global issues from the perspective of the little guy. Not the people making the rain, but rather the people like us who always seem to be getting wet whenever a storm comes in. Colin Erdle, a local farmer, will help you and me understand how issues like the Iran war or government-funded support for farmers being offered or taken away, those are large global issues. But he's going to help us understand how those global issues affect the little guy way down on the food chain. Sorry for the pun, but with Colin as a farmer, we're literally talking about the food chain. Look, we know that inflation resulting from policies typically coming from Washington, D.C., we end up seeing it at the gas pump, at the grocery store, in our daily life items like prescription drugs, all the way to our mortgages and rent and car leases and other big ticket items. Well, stick around to find out how national and global issues like the wars in Ukraine and Iran or tariffs impact an actual small farmer whose livelihood is like a small wave in a turbulent socioeconomic sea. And then with his help and a little bit of common sense, we can all figure out why and how these international events and policies change our day-to-day decisions and options. That's what makes this show different, special, important. Look, I want to understand these issues from the perspective of how they impact me and you, the little guy. As a college professor, when I'm teaching law or sociology, I really make it a point to apply whatever it is we're studying to recent and current events. So when I teach a really, really old case like Marbury versus Madison, which is in the early 19th century, which means the early 1800s. So when I teach Marbury versus Madison, what matters to me is that my students understand how these ancient and distant events and cases are still relevant to their lives. And that's why you tune in. That's why you watch. That's why I'm here. And so, just one more reminder, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's really important. But in the meantime, I just wanted to let you know that this show, What If I'm Right, is here to bring that little guy's perspective to light. So without further yammering from yours truly, let's get right into my conversation with Colin Erdle, farmer extraordinaire from New York State. Hi, you're watching What If I'm Right with Ian Heller. Today, I have a wonderful guest. His name is Colin Erdle. He is, and I'm going to read it because there's just so much in there, I'm going to forget if I don't read it. So pardon my eye contact. Colin Erdle is a sixth generation. Wow. Sixth generation farmer and a partner of Erdle Farms in Silver Creek, New York. Erdle Farms grows blueberries, seedless table grapes, strawberries, raspberries, and Concord grapes. They are a part of Welch's Cooperative, participate in the Elmwood Farmers Market, distribute their produce to local and regional markets, and operate a U-Pick program at their farm. Colin feels that there are disconnects between state-level policies and farming practices. He identifies the lack of communication between sectors of the food system and the lack of supporters in the area as being, well, major issues, which, quite frankly, sounds like that's exactly what they are. He also recognizes the difficulties any farmers face in starting up their operations due to costs of equipment and land, and those costs, as we probably all know, have actually changed. We'll get to, Colin will be grilled to let us know how that's impacted him and where he thinks the impact has been coming from. So, Colin, welcome to What If I'm Right with Ian Heller. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ian.
Colin, tell me a little bit about your farm. Gosh, 6 generations. I mean, I guess that's the American thing that people like me. I'm a third generation. So I'm way, I'm a real minor compared with you.
Well, it hasn't always been in the same place. Usually, when an Erdle gets smart enough and earns enough money, they decide to sell the farm and leave and come back. Um, so, I've my father started a hobby farm while he was working for Welch's. I grew up on the hobby farm. I was a music teacher for a while and realized that I wanted to be outside again, and so I
Mm.
turned it from a hobby farm into something that is somewhat more um, focusing on feeding people. So that's what we
Can
do.
you tell when you say a hobby farm? When I grew up, I was in the suburbs, and we had tomatoes and eggplants and all sorts of stuff that we grew. That was our backyard. I would not call it a hobby farm. I'd call it a hobby to farm in that instance.
You know,
You seem like you're talking about something a lot more formal and probably a lot bigger. So what was that, or what is that?
it, when it first started, it was 4 acres of blueberries, about a half acre of gooseberries, 17 acres of grapes. We had like a U-Pick stand that was on the honor system, which people did not honor. We used
Hmm.
to, pick blueberries by hand, put them in the back of the minivan, drive around to farm stands, and sell them for a 30% discount to people who would make money off them. Just it was a very good economics lesson as a child. That's we call it Erdle Farm School of Economics. So,
It sounds like it's a way to, I guess when you're a kid, it's a way to really learn how economics works and how
oh yeah,
farming works.
yeah.
And it also, I'm sorry, I just went, and it also probably brought in a couple of extra bucks now and again for, I don't know, mad money, fun money, or
Yep.
something like that, or just existence money. I don't know what the circumstances were.
Existence money, growth money. I tell my daughters all the time because they're 8, 6, and 3. They help me out at the farmers market. I tell them money is a tool, and this is what we do to get it. This is what it's for. It's not. It's not just. It's not just for fun. So you gotta know how to use it, because if you don't know how to use it, you lose it.
You wanted to be outside. You had been pursuing a career I'm assuming in music. That's something you and I have in common. Unlike you, um, I'm always drawn back to a microphone. I just am. I am. I guess my ego just needs constantly being be stroked. But what brought you? But you just to be outside. I love to be outside. I go hiking with my wife pretty frequently.
Hmm.
That's not the only thing that draws you back, I'm assuming.
Well, I was a music teacher in Cleveland and then inner city Buffalo, and it was pretty interesting experience. Pretty violent areas. I remember one morning eating breakfast with my kids in the lunchroom, and I was looking at the quality of the food that they had
Mm,
at their lunch, and I thought I could do a better job feeding these kids than I could teaching them. And it
wow.
took about 7 years, but we started winning the bid for seedless grapes for city of Buffalo, and I deliver. That is my favorite order every year when we deliver the grapes to the kids up in Buffalo. So,
Wow.
you know,
I love motivation like that. I know a lot of people who are very skeptical and, I don't know if it's because they themselves don't have that sort of there's a certain selflessness or actually you're defining the self based on the helping of others. Um, I every time people ask me why I teach and I tell them it's not the money because I get paid less than the garbage man. I really do. I get
yeah.
paid
Oh, I
less
remember.
money than the
Yeah,
garbage man, than the postman, and I don't begrudge them making more. I just think I should. And yet I keep on going back and I do have and did have a lot of options. I'm very highly educated and I'm
yeah.
good at what I do, and yet I keep on going back to this career that tells me, "Yeah, we don't value you." But when I have my students in front of me, I'm
They
not thinking
value
about
you.
my paycheck.
Yep.
I'm thinking about their eyes. I'm looking and seeing, am I getting anywhere? And I love my students. That's the I look, I love to perform, so it needed to be some sort of a performance, type of thing. I was a litigator when I was a law when I was practicing law. I liked
Hmm.
performing. But to perform and not be performing just as a gladiator, which is what lawyers do, and I think
Yep.
it's a great career. I really do. We all need people to fight our battles. We really do. We need help. There are battles that we're just not prepared for. We don't have the right ammunition. We don't even know what the rules of engagement are. So lawyers go into the courtroom. That's what we do. And you did that for your career to go back into the family farm and say, "I wanna use this to help those students that I was helping in a different way." So,
Yep.
I'm assuming that you find your life at this point rather gratifying?
Oh yeah, what I do is extremely gratifying. I like to, like anybody else, I'd like to make more money. There's years where we do, but about 2 hours before I got on this phone call, I was talking to my neighbor who's going bankrupt next month, and it farming is farming is difficult in a good year.
Yeah,
Like I have a few friends who are lawyers, and we like to talk about strategy. And I think I said something along the lines once is I get to strategize every day because you make a
mm,
plan before you go to bed at night. You wake up and you make a new plan and you go with it, and everything
yeah,
changes and everything breaks. And it's problem solving. I I like the challenge. I like the physical challenge. Um, you're pushing your mind and your body, but things go wrong in even a good year. And Mother Nature always wins in the end. We just like
yeah,
to try and win some battles against her, but um, it it doesn't help when there are other factors that affect your business. I remember my uncle he was a colonel in the Air Force, C-135 pilot refueler, and his favorite line was, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Um, and
Ronald
it's
Reagan destroyed that line.
yeah, yeah, he killed it.
He really did.
But it seems like not every time. Sometimes the government does help us. Um, crop ins- one big thing with agriculture in Africa is it can't really get off the ground because they don't have options for crop insurance, and crop
Mm.
insurance really needs to be helped subsidized by the government. And I did not have crop insurance for a long time. I see the benefit of it. It helps keeps industries alive. Um, but like especially in New York State, I'm sure that our politicians are well-meaning when they try to help. They're trying to help somebody. Um, I remember a few years back, Kathy Hochul changed the work week for farmers and farm laborers to be capped at like I can't remember the exact number. It was like 40 or 50 hours, and every hour over that is overtime. Um, and it's really good for factories. But you got to make hay when the sun shines,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
live in New
yeah,
York State,
yeah.
and we're used to working 80 hours all summer long to get the job done. It didn't really affect my industry too bad. It affected some guys, but it killed the dairy guys. I
Mm.
mean, you it. I think being a dairy farmer in the Northeast is the most dangerous job in the world. And I heard this a long time ago. It's because of the hours, the heavy equipment, the augers, the silos. A lot of people get hurt, and
Mm.
you're tired all the time because you're working
Yeah,
18, 24-hour days, and you you get all the hay in, you get all the feed in all summer long, and then in the winter you milk the cows. You never
right,
stop milking during the summer, but you literally can't make hay in December.
right.
And so when you take a system that works based on natural law with the ebb and flow of literally how our planet flies around the sun,
Right.
and you try to apply government to it, it does not work.
Yeah.
And like I said, people are going out of business every day. And
So much
yeah,
of what we experience is kind of the result of the doctrine of unintended consequences.
100%.
And you know, we can examine things from the perspective of what was the intention. And, you know, we can go deeper than that and talk about their intention is to keep their job. And I get that. And that's that, like, but that's everybody for the most part.
Every single
So, you
person
know,
on the
that doesn't change if you're a politician or if you're a lawyer or if you're a farmer.
planet.
You want to keep your job.
Yep.
But, um, you know, I'm just thinking about the idea of a 40-hour work week, and to protect, and I'm sure the interest was to protect people from being exploited.
Hmm.
But, you know, you're talking about, yeah, exploiting a human being exploiting another person. Let's try and stop that. A nature just doing what it does that causes exploitation, so to speak, is like, well, what do you want to do? We're not going to be able to change the rotation of the planets.
Oh
This is
yeah.
all there, at least not yet. And so, and I'm just thinking in terms of my dad was a financial guy, and he used to like the thing that he hated most was his accounting work, particularly come around, you know, he was still doing the taxes for people, even he most of the time he wasn't even compensated for it because that's not what he really wanted to do, but he was
Hmm.
helping out all the friends and relatives. And I just remember when going down to the dining room, and my father had like files and papers all over the place, and he'd be up until the wee hours of the morning and wake up at the crack of dawn. Sounds like a farmer,
Yep.
and just it's tax time, and that's just. And then I used to be a litigator. Let me tell you something. When
Hmm.
you're a litigator, you should be walking around when your trial starts with keep your hand away from my mouth. I'm going to bite everything. I'm in a
Yep.
bad mood. I'm not getting enough sleep. I think I might lose. I'm an idiot. I'm a genius. Like all these things are rattling around in your mind and protection, I'm supposed to be like less than 40 or 40 hours a week. I got a guy who's, you know, who's on trial. I've got to give him whatever time he needs.
Exactly.
You've got a farm.
You got to farm. Oh, and there's a demographic out there I've heard where 17% of farm labor is unpaid. And when you first hear that, you think, oh, someone's being exploited. You're like, yeah, it's my father or
Yeah,
my wife
right,
or my
right,
kids.
right, right.
The people who are part of the farm, who are doing input because they know long term this has to survive.
Mm-hmm.
and there's not enough money to go around, and usually it's the retiring father or the brother or a friend who's helping, but that free no one works for free unless you own it, and there's
And
no
even then, you're
employee.
still being exploited. It's
You're
just that it's your own
Yeah,
damn fault, right?
or the system. I mean,
Yeah.
Canada has this wonderful policy where they don't allow any food to be imported until all of the food that has been grown in the green belt has been used first.
Hmm.
I don't know how they manage that. I know it's easier with wine, and that's kind of how they control their wine industry. At
Hmm.
least that's what I've been told. But I don't think that's possible for us, nor would it be a
No,
wonderful free market.
no. As a
Um,
matter of fact, well, as I just read or listening to a podcast where they were talking about, oh, it's oil. It's hysterical. Like people don't think in terms of grades of oil, but the United States oil is actually a reasonably high quality
oh,
oil.
it's
Okay.
beautiful. It's as good as it
On,
gets.
on the other hand, much of the oil that we use, and right now we're in the midst of the Iran war or whatever you want to call it.
I call it
It
World War
feels like
Three. It
war to
started in
me, but
Ukraine.
what's that?
I call it World War Three. It started in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, well, let me tell you, it's certainly spreading fast, right? But in it, I couldn't disagree. I certainly don't disagree with you, but I'm just thinking in terms of Venezuela crude oil. It's very, very thick,
Yep.
and it requires a tremendous amount of processing in order to make it
Hmm.
at the grade where you can use it for gasoline or any other use, any other human use for it. The United States drilling, actually, we have very high grade oil. You know what we do with that oil?
You sell it.
That's right. We use most of the oil that we use is imported because we make as a nation more money selling our higher grade oil
Hmm.
than we do processing the lower grade oil when it comes to the United States.
Yep.
And so, like to your point with Canada, it's kind of like, wow, yeah, you get to keep your own stuff, but is that even necessarily
Oh
the
no.
best way
Oh no.
economically
Oh
for
no.
your own people?
No. And I mean, Canada still has 60 cow dairies that are operating not because of the money that they make off of milking the cows. They get a $200,000 check or whatever a year based on the size of their dairy to continue milking the cows to keep the cost of milk low, which is
Right.
why dairy in the Northeast is going down because the subsidization of Canadian milk is actually driving down the cost of milk in the Northeast because they export it, or they did at one point in time. I don't know if that's still happening.
Yeah.
But there, I remember reading Adam Smith's book, and the price of gold is the price of gold. The price of gold doesn't change. We're in a closed unit called the world, and you can play games, but every little game you play, it affects somebody else.
Right.
So price of milk in Canada affects the price of milk in the United States. Price of grape juice in the United States affects the price of grape juice everywhere else. So
One of the things that I tell people about Adam Smith, people who think that they're really, oh yeah, he's laissez-faire economics. No, actually, that was not Adam Smith. He did not say no regulation. He believed that there was kind of a virtuous cycle that would happen economically for people because you get the benefit of a new purchaser when you have when you compensate your employees
yep,
better. They become your clients. And if they're not your
100%.
customer, they're going to be the customer of another
Somebody
business
else.
and their people are going to be your customers. So
Yep.
he had anticipated a certain virtuous cycle, which here's the sociologist in me coming out, but that's where the notion in the 19th century and the 18th century in the United States, a lot of our economic life was driven by a religious fervor to be personal asceticism. In other words, people who are Calvinists and Lutherans who believe that the purpose of money is not to spend it on the sinful needs of the flesh. So you make a lot of money and then you reinvest it because you're not supposed to spend it on yourself. And you reinvest it in the business and it gets bigger and bigger. And this is all because they want to demonstrate, and I don't mean this
Warren
negatively, to
Warren
demonstrate that they're
Buffett
getting
calls
to
it
heaven.
Warren Buffett calls it snowball.
It
It's
works.
right. It
It
works.
works. But here's the
It's a
problem.
tool.
Economics, that sort of economics, which in fact Adam Smith was very, very much, and not only just in favor, he was a believer in it, not from the religious perspective, but that it would be economically expedient to reinvest in your own business. That was perpetuated by this religious thing. The religious thing is gone. And
Yeah.
what we have now is greed. I really want to also understand your value to me, in addition to just a great discussion, is I want to know how you're being impacted, whether it's by global issues or by
Mm-hmm.
local ones or both.
Oh,
How does the
well,
local farm in New York get impacted by all of this?
so in the 1970s, you could buy a truck for a couple $1,000s. All right. You go out and you try and buy a similar truck now, it's $100,000. All right. American farmers have been Gumby for 40 or 50 years stretching. And we've stretched about as much as we can. There isn't a part of our industry that isn't affected by government overreach or by inflation. Like COVID was hard. COVID increased our costs like 20 to 30%. Some of that has gone down, but a lot of those prices have stayed, which is why you see costs in the grocery store much more expensive than what they used to, because our inputs were much more expensive. Um, Price of diesel. I get to go to the Seneca Reservation to buy my diesel, so it's a lot cheaper. But it is significantly more expensive than it was a month ago.
Yeah.
Right. So that is going to hurt. It's when the price of diesel goes up, it doesn't just affect me by the price in which I put it in my tractor. It affects my core inputs by raising the price of trucking.
Right.
So
It's the
anything
same
that
with
I'm going to buy,
fertilizer and what's
right?
going on in the Gulf.
Oh, when that liquid natural gas facility in Qatar got hit, that was 17% of their
Yeah.
supply. You are going to see the fertilizer prices for the people that they supplied go up. Luckily, I think we get ours from Ohio. I think Ohio and Canada are both produced domestically, but that price will increase.
Of course.
Right?
But now I've got
So
a question for you, and this is a conspiratorial question, which is why it could
perfect,
be it could go viral. Watch out, okay?
right up my alley.
So here, I'm sure that this is impacting large farms as well as small farms, but I'm also equally sure, without knowing, that they're going to be able to withstand this way longer than you will. And
I
do
don't
you?
know. I don't know.
Well, and that's why I want to ask. So let me just frame the question, and then I really do want your insight on this. I'm assuming that the issue with whether it's Iran or or tariffs or whatever it is, that from a conspiratorial perspective, we're going to always have farming because we always need to eat. But farming, well, we will. Otherwise we're all going to die. Okay,
Well,
so
we are less than 0.5% of the population.
no, I understand, and that's actually my point. Little by little, and in an accelerating fashion, quite frankly, small farms, and I'm not talking about small farms like the backyard. I'm talking about real, honest to goodness farms
Mm-hmm.
that don't compare with, I don't know, the ones that work with the enormous ones, Dole, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, whatever. It's not my expertise, but eventually we're going to have farming again, even if there's a terrible problem for a specific amount of time. The people or the companies that are going to be able to pick up the pieces are the large multinational corporate farms. And I just can imagine a world in which, yeah, all the Erdles, all the Erdle farms are like, yeah, we can't afford this anymore. And then Monsanto comes over and says, hey, uh, we'll take over. It's either bankruptcy or
Hmm.
10 cents on the dollar. And then suddenly these mega farm corporations are even larger, and there's even fewer Erdle Farms. And that's why this is a hiccup to them. It's existential to you. And they'll make it through. And then everybody's going to come to them to kind of pick up the pieces. And you're just going to be able to either go back to teaching music or working as an employee at the farm that you used to own. That is the conspiratorial perspective on this. And you can tell me
I don't
that I'm
think it's I
completely
don't think it's
crazy.
conspiratorial because in this industry, a lot of people have the idea that uh, if you want to survive, you got to get bigger, which means you carry
Right.
more debt load, which means you incur a lot of these more costs. And when you get the cycle wrong and you are just trying to get bigger, bankruptcies happen really quickly.
God help you.
Right? And if you don't know your cash flow, if you don't know your cycles within the environment that you are existing in, there's a lot of balls being juggled, and it's Gumby is getting stretched. I heard this year that more farms had started to go bankrupt within the past 12 months than in the early 1980s when we had Farm Aid.
And do you
And
think that's a coincidence or just like, oh, an unintended consequence? Because I'm
oh,
not so sure about that.
I think it is a convergence of half a century of unintended consequences. You can't, and part of me doesn't even want to point the finger at the government so much because it's just what they do. And you have you have 40, 50 years of unintended consequences that have spread this out. Yeah, maybe the big farms will take everything over, but you don't have to work for them. And
No, I
if they don't,
understand that,
but
but you won't have them, you won't have your own space anymore because there's hardly, if it's 0.5%, it'll be 0.1%, then it'll 0.05, and then that's my point. And I
oh
don't,
yeah, well,
I'm not going to disagree with you calling it a convergence of unintended
yeah,
consequences. I'd like to make it a little broader. I think
but
it's the wait.
there's
I
a
think it's the convergence of unintended consequences with intended consequences.
oh definitely,
That's my
yeah,
point.
oh
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
conspiratorial side of it.
Well, I think the nature of the business is you have that intended consequence, but what another problem that we have is I think our median age for people in my industry is like 56 or 55. And so
And
you
it's
have,
backbreaking.
yeah, and yeah, tell me about it. Like, so you've got this bubble of people going through who know what they're doing. It takes you about 20 years to figure this business out.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of upfront capital to get into it. So you've got people who are at the top end who are like, a lot of the guys that are going out of business in my area, they're in their 70s and they're like, what do I care? And it was so hard that
right,
the kids never wanted to come home and learn how to do it. And
right.
so even if Bill Gates decides that he's going to go and buy up all these farms, if he doesn't get people that know what they're doing to work for him, he doesn't know how to do it. And
Yeah,
then
well,
and then you just have another problem.
the only thing that Bill Gates is hoping is that it's a farm with a lot of young, you know what. Anyway, I don't want to go too deeply
Striped
into that one.
striped pajamas.
Man, oh man, I just and it just makes you wonder. It's like, is Warren Buffett like the only billionaire who seems to still have a certain level of decency to him? It
Probably.
just seems like it either attracts and
Warren
or
Warren Buffett is only a billionaire because he did it for the love of the game. If he could have just
yeah,
stayed at home playing spades every day, he would have been fine. But like
I think that's probably right.
he likes what he does and he's good at it. It
That sounds
yeah.
like us. That sounds like
uh,
us. He
yep,
didn't do it because he wanted to become this, at least my understanding of his background, and also the way he continues to live his life, quite frankly. He lives
exactly.
still modestly, very
Yeah.
modest. That
No,
wasn't the point.
the money was just a way of keeping score. He was winning.
And the timing was really what made Warren Buffett, because
Yeah.
the economic engine of this nation at the time that he was creating all of this, this approach. And I shouldn't say creating it, because actually my oh gosh, my son would yell at me for not remembering the name of this book. Benjamin Graham, Benjamin Graham's book. My father, that was his Bible. Okay. It was
Hmm.
all about investing based on research and value investing.
Yeah, don't invest in it if you don't understand it, right?
And Benjamin Graham explained, look, you can find these things and just wait until they kind of catch up, where
Yep.
the data it catches up with reality, or the other way around. That was
Hmm.
Warren Buffett. He modeled his entire approach
Oh
off
yeah,
of the Benjamin Graham approach.
understand the systems and what their needs will
Perfect.
be. Yep. Yep.
And see which ones are kind of long-term good hold, buy and hold, buy and hold, buy and hold.
You only
And
lose money on stocks that you sell.
and my dad would always say, it's paper losses, Ian. Until you sell it, it's just paper loss. And he
Yep.
called it paper loss because he used to get the newspaper.
Yep.
And so it was a paper loss. He would look and say, oh, it went down $10. Oh my God, we lost $1,000. It's a paper loss. Tomorrow,
Yep.
the paper might say that you got the 1,000 back. You didn't lose a penny. The paper did. But now, you know, we judge our own value much more frequently. It's like going on the scale every 5 minutes to see if you're gaining weight or losing weight, gaining weight or losing weight, gaining weight. It's like, oh my
Don't look.
God, I'm making how much money? No, no, just
Hmm.
wait. And you're still a good person, even if you're down a little bit. Just wait. But man, patience is gone. Ugh, like all that. I
Hmm.
sound like an old fart, don't I? But I don't care. I like those
Well,
values.
well, in our industry, you got to plan a little bit ahead. If I planted crops every year, it would only be 1, 2, 3 years. Vines, I'm I'm farming vines that are probably 120 years old. Some of them right now. Some vines I planted that are 20 years old. Some vines I planted that are 9, 12 years old. But you gotta look forward and see how it goes. And when I think about these problems, and I think unintended consequences have put us in these situations, but the USDA is really, really good at trying to help us out. If you were a young person listening to this and you thought that you wanted to help contribute to decentralized agriculture and get into the business, there is a first-time farmers loan that you can get to the get through the USDA. I think it has 1% interest or somewhere around there.
Is that still available?
Oh, 100%. You got a
Okay,
little,
because a
you
lot
got
of
a
things have
little,
been cut. That's why I'm asking.
you got a little bit of experience. You've got a plan and you have an idea on what you want. You can get this one-time loan, house, farm, 40 acres, 100 acres, 200 acres, all the equipment, and it will help get you into the business. You got to know what you're doing a little bit.
Yeah.
You got to have a plan. But like USDA could help fix our farmer population by enticing 25-year-old people from Cleveland who want to move out to Ohio and farm the way their grandparents did. The capital is there if you are willing to do it. Um,
Is the labor there if you're willing to do it? I'm not talking about a farm small enough for you to do yourself, because that's very small. Is the labor still available now?
it will be after AI puts everybody out of work.
How does that work? What do you mean?
White collar workers who are going to lose their jobs to AI.
Ah,
I- otherwise, otherwise, no, it's not.
yeah,
No.
I don't mean to sound like, because I think that in a way that's wishful thinking. I really do. I think that
Oh
the
no, I
idea that
when
they're actually going to go out and do backbreaking work when they've been raised with the idea that their value is completely dependent upon how much money they make. I don't know that they're going to try first or second or third to go out in the sun and become a redneck, which is really where that term comes from,
I'm
is
an
the sun
optimist.
beating down on their necks.
I'm an optimist.
You gotta be. You're a farmer. Reality is not going to help you. You need to be an optimist.
I think I was 32 years old and I was eating lunch, and there are these three young guys sitting next to me, and they're complaining about being on unemployment. And I said, "Oh, I can give you a job." They're like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm a farmer. They're like, "We're not going to do that. That's Mexican work." And
That's
I
right.
thought,
That's yeah,
you
yeah.
son of a bitch.
That's right.
Like, yep, you're
I'm
too good
sorry.
for it.
My skin is a little bit too is a little bit too peachy
Yep.
to say whoa. And you know the interesting thing is you went back to farming. There is so much, and I know this is going to, for some people listening to this, are going to be kind of surprised, but going back to farming is a very Marxist thing to do because what he said was all of the manufacturing, the factories that are out there, they're destroying our connection to the product that we are working with, that we're building. You are part of an assembly line. He came before the assembly line, but he saw what was happening. Ford was the one that was able to make the assembly line such an incredibly efficient way of production. But
Mhm.
he saw what was coming. People are only putting in, are only doing the same thing over and over and over, and they don't actually see what he called the species human, how the labor turns into a product that only human beings really take a product and natural resource and just by dint of our labor turn it into something completely different. Maybe beavers come close, they make a dam, but they're not
Mhm.
looking back at that dam to our knowledge and saying, "Man, do you see that? I built that dam." It's like, "No, no, no, the water went in a different direction. I'm happy now." But that relationship between what you do and what you create has been virtually severed.
Oh,
And
100%.
so we have no way to judge our value except by our bank account.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
and
not a very good means of determining that.
and I'm a firm believer that people need purpose. And when you don't have a purpose, when all you're trying to do is make money, you
I
get
agree.
pretty lost. I've seen people do it. I
Yeah,
remember there's a guy I know who spent a lot of time working in advertising in New York City. He does not anymore. I'm pretty sure he works in the ambulance trade. But he was like, Colin, all I do is sit around and figure out how to make rich people more money, and
yeah,
I'm miserable. It's like,
yep. So,
find a way to
Colin,
contribute.
I don't want you to hold on to that thought because you might not sleep very, very nicely. That's a tough thought to leave on. But what I will tell you is I really enjoyed our conversation. I think that there are so many more things that I'm sorry for the pun, we can dig into because
Yeah.
this is what we're missing is people with completely different perspectives. And that's why when with the name of my show, What If I'm Right, is
I say it
not
all the
about
time.
what
I say it all
it's
the
like
time.
I'm like, well, I'm asking that question of myself. What if I'm right?
Like,
I
Ian, my
want
my problem is if I wait 3 years, I usually am, and it hasn't gotten any better.
Yeah, well, that's why we knew 3 years ago you were right. So in any case, I wanna thank you with all my heart for you spending the time, but there are so many more things I wanna learn from you, so many more things I wanna hear from you, and I just wanna thank you for giving your time so, generously. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, it's always easier for me to check in when it's raining or snowing. If it's grape harvest, don't have Emily call me because it's just a solid no. But if you ever want to just drive and talk while I'm on the tractor, I can do it without the screen. So
Maybe you'll tell me where your farm is, and one day I'll visit you. And because
yeah,
I love going into the mountains, and I love going into the valleys, and I love going out into nature.
well, blueberry U pick starts usually the first week of July. So if you
Okay.
drive out to Western New York, July, August, farm is open. Come and pick all the berries you want. And then once blueberries are over, we start grape harvest. We close it down and we go like hell to get all the grapes in that we can. So
And you know what, Colin? I will always pay for the things I'm not like one of those rich people who loves to get gifts even though they can afford it. I
you
think
can
people should
you,
be compensated
you can eat a
for
few for free. You gotta taste
oh,
it.
I'm gonna sneak a few, of course, but most of it I'm gonna wanna pay for. But in any event, I want to thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to the next time we meet. And I want to remind everybody, and please tell everybody that to tune into to What If I'm Right with Ian Heller, because I really think there are a lot of people who have stories that other people need to hear, and yours is one of them, and I think it's important. So
I
thank you
appreciate it.
so
Thanks for
much.
having me.
You take good care.